Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am the guy who picked Mateus Nicolau to defeat Alex Perez. And I'm here to recap the full UFC on ESPN 55 event. And I will start at the top with Perez knocking out Nicolau. Another fight that I got completely wrong. But the bet was right. Of course, I bet on under 4.5 rounds primarily, as well as the props, which hit Perez via knockout anyway. But and I just trusted the weaknesses of these guys. And moving forward, of course, Nicolau, his biggest weakness is his chin. I'd hate to start by talking about the loser, but that's the first thing that's coming to my mind here. He's got 4 losses now, all 4 via knockout, 2 in his most recent fights, even if he had a year layoff and whatever. It's just it's a big problem for him professionally, if not physically. I don't want to start talking about CTE and whatever because I can't advise somebody to retire when he's 1 win away, or he was on Saturday, from a title shot, or he's close anyway. He's nearly reached the top of the sport, of his division, but he's got a glaring weakness, and it's a bad one. If he was submittable and he was submitted 4 times, like Ishmael Bonfim, who I'll be talking about in my preview videos for next week, that's another thing. It's a weakness and it's consistent, and you got to worry about that and patch it up. But having a weak chin and being susceptible to being knocked out, that's rough for a fighter because you got to train every day to even get to the fight, and it's such a physical sport. So listen to me telling you MMA is a physical sport. My point is, I don't know. He's got something to think about, he and his team there. But at the very least, he's going to have to drastically change his tactics and just, his technique, really. Just always have his hands up and never throw any strikes because your hands have to be glued to your chin. I don't know. It's a tough spot to be in, but yeah, it's a glaring weakness. As for Perez, he's a guy that I can't say I was ready to write off, but I was preparing to write him off after I thought Makhachev would submit him. But he had a really close fight with Makhachev. I thought he lost, of course, but I thought his profile kind of got a nice little bump there. And here in this fight, I think he reminded everybody he's one of the best fighters in the world. Reminded me, anyway. And this was one of his best victories ever, Alex Perez. He looked phenomenal. Thought he looked really good throughout the whole fight. It was his fight. And he capped it off by getting a clean knockout in 7 minutes, which even if Nicolau's chin is whatever and blah, 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 there's only 4 guys that have taken him out, and Perez is one of the exceptional fighters to do so. So doesn't get better than that for a victory, a top 5 victory, and putting the guy away after dominating him. This was great for Perez. Maybe as good a win as he's ever had, although the Jussier Formiga win was very nice as well. But here's a main event. He gets it done with the spotlight on him and on short notice as well. I'm really happy for Perez, and I want to see him fight anybody, really. Even Makhachev, that fight interests me. I'd love to see that under different circumstances, 5 rounds or whatever. I know we're not going to see that next, but I think he can handle anybody. I think he can hang with anybody at the very least, Alex Perez. So this was awesome. He returns as a contender officially with this fight. You can criticize the fight itself, the matchup, because he's coming off a loss and whatever, but he stepped up on short notice, taking on one of the best fighters in the world, and he dominated him, got a knockout. So great win for Alex Perez. He is now in title contention, again, despite the recent setback to Makhachev, and I hope he remains more active and nobody pulls out of any fucking fights. Bogdan Guskov knocked out Ryan Spann. Bogdan Guskov, he's a dangerous guy, even if he's a vulnerable guy. And you'll hear me say that in his next fight. I'll probably be picking against him because I still see the sloppiness and vulnerability. But he's dangerous and he's tough. He's a guy where if you don't knock him unconscious, he's going to keep coming. And if you don't strangle him, he's going to keep coming. Ryan Spann wasn't able to do either one of those things. Yeah, he hit him with some nice shots and he took him down, had good control. But Bogdan Guskov kept himself safe. And in round 2, where I thought Guskov would have been the one fading, Spann was the one fading. He was, I think, a little flustered early in round two and just was never able to recover. And then 3 minutes into the round, he got put down and TKO'd on the ground, even kind of knocked out. I don't know. I'd have to rewatch it in slow mo, but it was one of those Jamal Hill situations where I think he went out. Really rough loss for Ryan Spann. He's a guy that's got a lot of great tools, and he can beat a lot of top fighters either way, knockout or submission. But he has a hard time putting it all together. And here, I think he was trying to win a more tactical fight, and his tactics were working for him early, but he wasn't able to maintain it. Wasn't able to sustain the wrestling game plan, and kind of fell apart in round two. But for Guskov now, he's got a lot of momentum. This was a co-main event win and not some short notice thing. He was put as the co-main event, even if it was in a shitty fight night. It still shows the UFC's got some faith in him, and he came through big over a guy in Ryan Spann who the UFC's already expressed some faith in, putting him in main event slots and whatever. So good win for Guskov, and for Ryan Spann, a potentially pivotal loss, but at the very least, a reminder of his durability issues. So great win for Guskov. Karine Silva, speaking of great wins, gets her first decision win over Ariane Lipski. Look, when you see a fighter that skilled, you know she can win a decision, but to watch it happen is something else. And I didn't think she looked bad in round three, even though I scored it for Lipski, or Da Silva, actually, Ariane Da Silva. But Karine Silva still looked good in this fight. I thought she was dominant early on. And then the end, where I thought she would have trouble and fade, she had a little trouble, but she did not fade. And that's really all I'm interested in when I'm watching Karine Silva fight. I want to see her go deep down the stretch. The last time she was in round three, I believe, was with Diani Barbosa, who's fighting next week. And Diani Barbosa outlasted her. But here, fighting a very skilled fighter and a very tough physical girl in Ariane Lipski, she was able to walk away with a clear victory. If some might consider it dominant, but overall, she had a competitive fight with a very skilled fighter, and she passed the test. So my opinion of her goes up, even if she did not look nearly as dominant as she has in the past, and of course didn't get a submission finish like she has in her last fucking whatever fights, 5 fights or whatever. But this is her best win, Ariane Lipski by decision. And for Lipski, or Da Silva, she had a really tough girl, and I think this loss will get a lot better with age. I still consider her to have a lot of momentum generally with the way she's looked as of late. And again, if this loss gets a lot better with age, she could be in a spot where, with a few more wins, she's looking very pretty, even though she's always kind of pretty. Very pretty fucking fighter. But right now, she's lost 3 out of her last 4. But again, Karine Silva's not done climbing, not by a long shot. Jonathan Diniz knocked out Austin Lane. Austin Lane, kind of like Ryan Spann, just, he's just not able to, he's a well-rounded fighter for a round. And he just wasn't meant to last here. Jonathan Diniz was too good on the feet, and Austin Lane was just too sloppy. Once he fell off a little bit in round 2, that was it for him. He was in survival mode for a good bit and then just taken out. Jonathan Diniz, I can't say my opinion of him has jumped with this win because it's about how I expected the fight to go. But he still did what he needed to do. And hey, he's 1-0 in the UFC now. Austin Lane may not be in the UFC by Monday or Tuesday or whatever. But still, Jonathan Diniz did what he needed to do and got a nice finish. David Onama and Jonathan Pearce had a good battle, a very sloppy fight. I think both guys were a little too gung-ho to take over the fight on the ground, where they should have been looking for a small advantage and control instead of the dominant finish and the flashy submission. But still a very close back-and-forth fight, and I thought David Onama won. I thought he looked good. I thought Pearce was going to be taking over the fight when he was having more success in the middle of the fight, but David Onama was really tough to control. Easy to wrangle, I thought. Jonathan Pearce had a lot of dominant wrestling moments with him, but once it turned into the jiu-jitsu battle, and Pearce, I think, is better jiu-jitsu, of course, but he just wasn't able to control him. David Onama was really tough, really wily, and kept reversing Pearce, and really, in general, out-hustled him. I thought both guys had their moments, and it was a competitive fight. Both guys looked good, I guess, or kind of bad because they made some sloppy decisions. But David Onama got a nice hustling victory, a 3-round fight over a guy who's a grinder in Pearce. And it's not like Pearce was caught on the feet, wasn't able to implement his fight. He was. And it was a fight where I would have thought he'd take over the fight, but he wasn't able to. So big credit to David Onama. And for Jonathan Pearce, it's a few losses in a row now, but I still think he's looked very tough and very competitive in every fight, especially the last 2 losses. Uros Medic knocked out Tim Means. This was tough. I love Tim Means, but it's just a matter of age, really. Age and power and skill and all that shit, too. But, yeah, the 40-whatever-year-old or the 40-year-old got knocked out by the 30-whatever-year-old or 20-something, whatever Uros Medic is. But he was just too much. I hit him with a beautiful uppercut, and Tim Means collapsed 2 minutes into the fight. This seemed... It's tough to say it seemed like a sure thing because Means has only ever been finished once by strikes, legitimately, just once, by a big shot from Nico Price. But here he was fighting a very dangerous striker in Uros Medic. This guy is way above average. So on paper, despite it being an anomaly, one of the only finishes, it still makes sense that he knocked him out. Great win for Uros Medic. He's a guy who... He's had some tough bumps in the road, of course, against Mirtabek Orobai, who's also fighting on next week's card with the other 5 people I've mentioned. But he's an excellent fighter, Uros Medic, and in particular, deadly on the feet. So he gets another violent finish over Tim Means. It's listed as a TKO, but whatever, the one shot put him down. And my opinion of Uros Medic definitely didn't go down with this fight. Really, can't wait to see that guy go again. And for Tim Means, look, it is only 2 knockout losses, but this is your most recent one, and it is when you're 40 years old. He's got some things to think about. I don't know what he looks like in the gym, but he's a very competitive fighter, well-rounded guy. I'm sure he's got more to offer at the UFC level, but your health is your health. So hopefully he's still in good shape physically. Speaking of which, just another... not very similar fight, but similar type of result anyway, where Victor Henry TKO'd Ronnie Yahya. Yahya, I thought, looked good early on, and by good, I mean competitive, but kind of a step behind. And then in the end, he just wasn't meant to last. Victor Henry is not the most potent finisher at all, but if he's winning a fight, he's generally doing so on the feet, and he was lighting up Ronnie Yahya. Yahya, if he's not able to take the fight to the ground, he's at a disadvantage. But now that he's 40 and he's coming off he's got 2 TKO losses in a row now, even with a year layoff, just like Mateusz Nicolau. But it's a problem moving forward if there even is a forward with him. So tough loss for Ronnie Yahya, but at least he wasn't knocked dead in this one or taken out. He was just kind of overwhelmed and outlasted, out-hustled by Victor Henry. But still, great win for Henry. He took Yahya out, getting himself, this was a spot where he needed to get a finish because it was a possibility where in most fights at the UFC level, I envision him out-grinding, outworking his opponents and winning a decision. But here, he pushed for the finish, and with a minute and a half left in the fight, he got it. Great win for Henry. Austin Hubbard beat Michał Figlak by decision. I thought this was a close fight, but Austin Hubbard, he's got that UFC experience, which I hate fucking saying that because even I don't know. Even I know that's a fucking stupid thing to say sometimes, but it's not nothing. Austin Hubbard's a guy who's fought much better competition. He's a well-rounded fighter. And even if Figlak, I think, was a bigger, stronger guy, looked like it there, and a good athlete himself, all right. I get dramatic when I cough, at least when there's a camera on me. But I still thought Austin Hubbard outworked and out-hustled him. A good win for Austin Hubbard. I don't know what his contract situation was, but he's coming off the Ultimate Fighter where he lost in the finale, and here he got a chance to shut down a guy who I think is talented, despite being 0-2 now in the UFC. But he next leveled him. So great fucking win for Austin Hubbard. Dontel Mays beat Kyle Machado. This was a very close fight, I thought. I really thought it could have gone either way. I did think Machado was out hustling him. Maybe it's just because he moves around so much on the back foot. But Dontel Mays landed the better shots for sure. I thought he did. Yeah, he knocked him silly. Knocked him down with a straight left, I believe, in round one and pounced on him. I can't say stole the round, but cemented the round there. And then I think Machado won round two, and in the end, Mays won round three, right? I don't fucking know. I don't remember the fight exactly, but I thought Mays was going to get the decision, even though it was very close, because he was landing the better shots. A lot of spinning shit he was attempting, which, whatever. If it works, it's amazing because you're 300 pounds. But those didn't really land, but the punches did. And I thought he narrowly outworked. I thought he narrowly outpointed Kyle Machado. As far as the work rate and the volume, I'm sure Machado put up better numbers. But Machado looked tough. I mean, this was a fight where I thought his durability would be put to the test. And yeah, he was roughed up a little bit, but I think the guy's very tough and it didn't slow him down, his cardio and whatever. Again, even if I thought he lost round three, but I want to see what he has to offer. He may end up being one of the lower end heavyweights, but still, I think he's going to be around for some time. And I think he's better than he's looked so far in the UFC. That loss to Mick Parkin, I said it before the fight, probably should have went his way, in my opinion. Ketlin Souza beat Marnik Mann by decision. Marnik Mann, she's just, she's outgunned, Marnik Mann. She's not meant to be in the UFC. And, she's done, I believe. I can't say that for sure. I don't know the situation. And some fighters get 4 or 5 losses in a row. Depends on what the UFC has planned with the division. But I think if they don't absolutely need her, she's done here. She served her purpose. And you know what? She's looked tough. She's looked tough and she looks scrappy here, trying to make things work against Ketlin Souza. But she's just outgunned on a physical and athletic level in most fights. And this was no different. And Ketlin Souza was definitely getting the better of her, roughing her up. And Ketlin Souza, she had a long layoff because she got her knee ripped apart by Karine Silva. But yeah, she's a girl who, despite being finished a bunch of times in her career, she's got a lot of great skills and she's done well at the lower end of the UFC so far. But I want to see her climb, see where she's going to go. Chris Padilla got a beautiful finish over Llontop. James Llontop. I got it right in the pre-fight. James Llontop. He's got some work to do on the ground, I believe. He was taken down. I believe Padilla caught a kick. I think he caught a kick or whatever. I forget exactly how he got the takedown, but James Llontop tried to get up like some white belt. Just turned over and started getting up like Derek Lewis. And he's not Derek Lewis. And Padilla wrapped his legs around him and strangled him instantly. Got a really tight choke. And that's just a bad look for a UFC fighter. He looked like a guy who was in a rush. Maybe he didn't want to concede the round because it was deep in round one or whatever, but you can't rush like that. And he rushed, tried to force something deep into round one, which is still relatively early in the fight. And Chris Padilla just kept him where he wanted him and strangled him very quickly. Great win for Padilla, who took this fight on a matter of days' notice, whatever it was. But yeah, this is steamrolling a guy that was a favorite, if nothing else. I can't say he was some big prospect or whatever, but steamrolling a guy that should have beaten you. Incredible UFC debut for Chris Padilla. Despite picking Llontop, I was really happy with that result. And he's a guy, Chris Padilla, who he's been finished himself twice by submission rear naked chokes. And one of them, he was TKO'd where he was kind of fatigued and whatever. But I think he's got really strong durability in general, especially on the feet. I think he's a really strong guy against, the one TKO loss was mostly due to fatigue and a body shot, I believe. But Padilla, he's going to be a tough guy to get out of there. And if you can't bully him physically, he's got a lot of great traits. Speaking of traits, Ivana Petrovic beat Na Liang by arm triangle choke in round 3. This was a fight where I relied on the traits, bet on them more than just sprinkles because they were like my primary bets. And this was a big win for MMA Al Dente. Na Liang is just an awesome round 1 fighter, but she's not meant to last after that. I thought she could have been finished in round 2, probably should have. And then in round 3, there was no way she was making it out of there. Ivana Petrovic, a well-rounded fighter, but perhaps a better finisher on the ground. And she was dominant after round 1, of course. Dominant, though. Once Na Liang slowed down, and Na was looking great on the feet early on and bullying her with the wrestling. But in round 2 was a totally different fight. Even at the end of round 1, Ivana tried to turn it around a little bit. But it was just a matter of destiny. And Na Liang's destiny is a finish in the second half of the fight, or in rounds 2 and 3 anyway. So that's what happened here. Ivana Petrovic got it done, outlasting Na Liang, who, despite her losses all looking one way, her wins also look one way because she is so dangerous in round 1. So Ivana showed a lot of durability and cardio and the rest of it, but she did outlast Na and got her out of there with a submission in round 3. And by the way, her last 2 submissions are in rounds 3 and 4, I believe. So that's a thing. That's a trait with her. Maheshate beat Gabriel Benitez by split decision, and this was, in my opinion, a very close fight. Really thought it could have gone either way. I thought Maheshate kind of won, but I really didn't know. I thought Benitez was very much in this fight, just kind of slowed down a little bit. But Maheshate, he won this fight with small moments. I mean, there were no real big moments here, I believe. Maheshate, I thought, would have had a big moment early on when he knocked out Benitez. That was my prediction. But Benitez was able to stand up to him and even fluster him early on. I thought Maheshate looked really sloppy and flustered, a step behind, not knowing which attacks to go with and just kind of letting Benitez lead the dance. But he slowly but surely fought his way back into the fight, and I can't say took over, but he won a decision. So another great win for Maheshate, just like the guy he beat on the Contender Series, who fucked him up early, but he outlasted and out-hustled that guy, and this was another one of those victories. Even if it's over a 36-year-old or whatever who's got one foot out the door in Benitez, he still did what he needed to do. Hard-fought victory. I can't say my opinion of him has jumped with this fight, but it hasn't plummeted either. And for Benitez, hey, at least he wasn't finished, and this was a close fight. Kind of wish he would have won it, but tough loss. Not a strike against his health, but definitely a strike against his career. A tough professional loss there. So I don't know what that's going to do for him. But either way, a good battle between those guys and maybe the closest fight on this card. So overall, not a bad event, but it was such a shitty card that it goes down as a bad event, I guess, for UFC fighters, for UFC events. But yeah, the main event is the story of the fight for me. Alex Perez returns the contendership, does so in emphatic fashion, and knocks out Nicolau. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit, and check out my other videos.